Deputy Council Chairman, Dr. Lee, Council and Court members, Deputy President and Provost, distinguished guests, representatives from co-organizers and supporting organizations, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the Innovation and Technology Forum organized by the Policy Research Center for Innovation and Technology. I am Helen, a current PolyU student and the MC today. The forum is also broadcast live through Zoom. Good afternoon to our online audiences. The newly established Policy Research Center for Innovation and Technology has marked PolyU's key milestone in fostering impactful disciplinary research in midst of our 85th anniversary celebration. This is the first university-level policy research center in PolyU that brings researchers and experts in a city together to facilitate the formulation of impactful INT policies and strategies for a better world. Today, we are honored to have Professor Wing-Tak Wong, Deputy President and Provost of PolyU with us. May I invite Professor Wong to say a few words to welcome you all. Professor Wong, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy Council Chair, Dr. Lee, Council and Court members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, I warmly welcome you to the INT Forum organized by the PolyU Policy Research Center for Innovations and Technologies. Research is a critical component of the INT ecosystem. To fulfill our ambitions of developing Hong Kong as an international INT hub, researchers must have great eagerness to participate in knowledge transfer and commercialization. Academia-industrial partnership is therefore a key to achieving the success we collectively desired. This forum, with more than 300 participants, provides a valuable opportunities for startups, incubators, industrial specialists, and decision makers to exchange insight on the topics of funding landscape from research to commercialization. With your wisdom, we hope that this forum could set off a enlightening initiative for long-term benefits on Hong Kong's INT developments in the global race. PolyU strives to achieve excellence in interdisciplinary research and innovations to address real-world challenges. Our goal is to cultivate breakthrough ideas that could improve economic outcomes, communities' livelihood, and quality of life in Hong Kong, the nations, and the world. The newly established Policy Research Center for Innovations and Technologies is well positioned as a leading think tank to facilitate the formulations of impactful INT policy strategies for the governments and the regions in the interest of society. Lastly, may I express my gratitude to the supporting organizations, including ASTRI, Cyberport, Hong Kong Science Park, and the MIT Hong Kong Innovation Note. Your support means a lot to us. You are highly encouraged to stay tuned to our center's website and social media for the latest news. Quoting the wise word of Albert Einstein, the only source of knowledge is experience. I hope that the experience of today's speaker and guests will unveil a new chapters in your pursuit of knowledge and entrepreneurship. Wish you all a very fruitful exchange at the forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Wong, and please stay for a photo taking session on stage. Now, may I invite Dr. Lawrence Lee, Deputy Council Chairman, Professor Christopher Chow, Director of Policy Research Center for Innovation and Technology, and Professor Eric Choi, co-director of Policy Research Center for Innovation and Technology, and all speakers to come on stage for a group photo. They are Dr. Miranda Lou, Executive Vice President, Mr. Peter Yan, CEO of Hong Kong Cyberport Management Company Limited, Dr. Denis Yip, CEO of Hong Kong Applied Science and Technology Research Institute Company Limited, Mr. Raymond Wong, Head of Investment of Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation, and Dr. Charleston Sin, Executive Director of the MIT Hong Kong Innovation Node. Everyone, please look at the photographer at the front and 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you all, and please stay. May I also invite council and court members to join for a photo, please? They are Mr. Duncan Chu, Mr. Jimmy Kwok, and Professor Philip Chan. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Mr. Chu, Mr. Kwok, and Professor Chan. Please be seated. Other guests, please remain on stage for another photo. We will have the next photo with all representatives from all co-organizers and supporting organizations to record this memorable moment. And so may we please have Professor Christina Wong, Director of Research and Innovation, and Mr. Calvin Wong, Interim Director of Knowledge Transfer and Entrepreneurship Office, to join us for a photo. Please look at the photographer. Thank you all, and please be seated. We will also love to record this memory with all of our guests and audiences off stage. And so everyone live here in the Senate room, please look at the photographer at the front when he's ready. And then for online audiences, it would be lovely to have you on camera as well. So please kindly turn on your camera. We will love to invite everyone to be in this photo. So online audiences with joining us on Zoom, it would be great to have you in the photo. Please turn on your camera. Okay, sure. We are going to take a couple more, so please hold your smiles. Thank you everyone for your support to our center. And thank you for recording this important moment for us. And it's now time for the forum. The theme of today is funding landscape from research to commercialization. Please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Miranda Lou, to share how PolyU implements knowledge transfer. Dr. Lou, please.
Good afternoon, all the distinguished speakers and guests. It is my honor and pleasure to share with you my topics today. It's funding and beyond PolyU's knowledge transfer and entrepreneurship system. So I think very quickly, I would like to have a very brief, quick recap on the missions of universities, which may sound a bit obvious to all of you, but taking this opportunity, I would like to highlight PolyU's knowledge transfer philosophy. So at PolyU, we embrace the philosophy that all the university IPs of practical value should leave campus to create societal impact. So at PolyU, our primary objective of knowledge transfer and commercialization is not to maximize commercialization income, but to create value. So embracing this value, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you and hopefully to stimulate some more discussion among the foreign participants about the role of university in tech transfer and commercialization. So as all of us agree that the source of innovation, I think most of them do come from universities. But the question or the challenge is the path from research to commercialization is really long. And it involves a lot of challenges that we have to overcome. And at PolyU, we do learn by our experience, and hopefully we can hear more wisdom from the group here. So as we all know, most of the university's research outcome, if we refer to the technology readiness level, the TRL, so most of them are only at level 3 or 4. So how to go from level 3 to 4 and then all the way to TRL 9 or to the market 10. So we often these days we talk about 1 to 10. So it's not that easy. So at PolyU, I think most, not only PolyU, but I think most universities prevailing tech transfer model is through licensing of universities' IP. So for PolyU, we are the university that has granted the most cumulative number of licenses among UGC-funded institutions. So I just want to quote an example that through licensing, we do create societal impact. That is our new talk technology. So through this technology and through licensing of the technology, we do create impact through those leading textile manufacturers in 8 countries that create well-known the shirts with better quality. But again, in terms of licensing income, is not that significant. And in sector-wide, I take a look at the figure. So altogether, if I take a look at the figures in 2019 and 20, so the whole UGC sector in terms of IP licensing income is less than 200 million, less than 10% of university sector-wide KT income. But I do see that this is a prevailing tech commercialization form. And the way is how we can move further from IP licensing to develop closer partnership with industries. So the second prevailing form of tech transfer model at PolyU is through collaboration with industry partners for contract research. So one of the good examples we'd like to share with you is the John Lab, our John Lab with Huawei, which is very demand-driven. So here through the John Lab, we co-work with Huawei on new technologies, and then through Huawei, they commercialize the technologies for industry applications to create a better living. So I think if we talk about tech transfer to contract research, broadly speaking, it represented half of the sector-wide KT income in 2019 and 20. So going a little bit further, so I think most tech transfer activities are more on a contract basis, so on a one-off basis. So of course, from university perspective, we would like to develop a more strategic and collaborative partnership with industry. For example, Hoya. So I think it is a very, very good case to demonstrate that PolyU develop collaborative partnerships from research to commercialization. So through this long-term partnership, we develop the DIMS technology, and then we commercialize through Hoya's manufacturing expertise and market networks. And so far, we have more than 3 million DIMS lens sold. And under this ongoing partnership, PolyU and Hoya is now co-developing the next generation of DIMS lens with part of the commercialization income arising from the mild-smart lenses. So I think this is to me, this is quite a good example that universities can adopt to develop more strategic and longer-term partnership from research to commercialization. And of course, to us, if we can commercialize the university's research and innovations through our own startup companies, and then that will be an even better form, and universities can create even more direct impact on society. But we have all the experts here. As we all know, running startup companies is not that easy, and we have a very high failure rates due to various reasons. In particular, the technology to market gap, the team sell-up, etc., etc. So to us, partnership with the ecosystem stakeholders for support and resources is very crucial. Okay, so taking this opportunity, I would like to share with the audience, the group here, a very quick snapshot about PolyU entrepreneurship ecosystem. So far, we have supported more than 450 startup companies in terms of mix. Half of them are tech startups, and the rest are design startups as well as social enterprises. I think all of them are advancing technological and social innovation in Hong Kong and beyond. And I'm pleased to share that the ambience within PolyU is getting more conducive. And we are pleased to see more and more professors and inventors, they go out, they take an extra step to commercialize the research output beyond research publications. So far we have around 29, and we have supported 4 unicorns directly from PolyU ecosystem, or they are founders, or they are graduates of the university, and 3 of them are now under Forbes Asia 100 to watch. So I can say we are doing well in this space, but I can say that PolyU does invest a lot of resources and effort in promoting and supporting entrepreneurship to commercialize universities' research and innovation. Okay, so about the gaps. So what are the gaps based on our experience so far? So in working on in developing the innovation capital in Hong Kong and beyond, I do take reference to the innovation capital landscape in the US. So this Mind Gap report was released in 2020, which shows that through the study, the innovation system that transitions breakthroughs in research from lab to market are constrained by the lack of available early stage capital and development support. And because of this gap, universities, together with the partners, they created different kinds of technology and startup gap funding and accelerator programs to address the challenge. So I think that is the general landscape in the US. But what about Hong Kong? So I think in the past few years, we do see that the Hong Kong government is devoting a lot of resources. So far, 150 billion to support INT development in Hong Kong, cultivating an entrepreneurial ambience. I think from 2013 to 2021, there has been threefold increase in the number of startups. So of course, we are very pleased to have the support from the public incubators like Science Park, Cyberport. They offer a lot of incubation programs and infrastructures to support the growth of the startup companies. At the same time, we can see a lot of public VCs also match the private public VCs also match the private VCs to encourage early stage investment. And actually, recently I read a report. It's shown that actually, I think that the startups can be financed at different stages. And I think half of them are financed at the mid to late stages. So maybe Duncan can give your expert opinions later on. But I think my observation is that out of the 150 billion public expenditure on INT development, I think most of them, these government funding schemes are more towards the basic research, as well as the applied research. So government does spare a lot of resources in these areas. But of course, also part of it to support early development of startups like tissues, as well as the PTST, etc. Plus, universities are now stepping up the effort to promote entrepreneurship. So I think that is the general landscape. But the question is, what about the proof of concept stage? What are the proof of technology stage? So based on PolyU's experience, my personal observation, the last mile before forming startup, that is the proof of concept or the proof of technology to validate the validity of the technology and to assess whether the technology has the relevant market. That's one. At the same time, the startup talent gap would need more attention because it's not difficult to form a startup companies, but having a good team with the right skills mix oftentimes is the most challenging part. So what about the role of universities then? So I put up 2 points. I'm not sure whether it's appropriate, but I think it's going back to the role of universities. So I do believe that as university, our role is to focus on innovation and technology talent development at different levels, undergraduate, postgraduate, research graduate level. That's one. And at the same time, maybe we can spare more efforts in the proof of concept and proof of technology stage to give them more support to validate the market. As at the same time, if we do a better job in this, we can de-risk a little bit more better because of the high failure rate of startup companies. So at the same time, in doing so, we help build a quality pipeline of startup companies which commercialize universities' research and innovations. So at PolyU, our target is not to count the numbers, but we emphasize more on the quality of potential or prospective startups. That's one. And the second point is that because, as a university, our core mission is education and research. I think that's very obvious. So there's a boundary for us to observe, even though we try to extend our best help to extent possible. So the model we adopt is a partnership model together with the incubators, industries, as well as the investors, so that we can better inform the industry needs. Because oftentimes I'll hear saying that the academic staff are more in the ivory tower, they're brilliant ideas, excellent discovery, but what about the market perspective? So here we do engage ecosystem partners to inform industry needs and to leverage the support and resources to advance the growth of startup companies. So I'm running out of time, right? So maybe I can give a very quick snapshot, an idea how PolyU nurture entrepreneurship. So it doesn't sound very unfamiliar to all of you if you talk about the university startup ecosystem. But what I want to share with you that At PolyU, we adopt a holistic approach. So our focus is not just to support setting up startup companies, but our emphasis, we put more emphasis from the education and ideation stage. Because again, it goes back to the mission of university. Our role is to nurture INT talents. So that's why education and ideation is more important among all. So maybe I don't need to go through all these details, but just want to share with you that because we do see the gap of the proof of concept and proof of technology, that gap. So that's the reason why PolyU is organizing a series of so-called future challenges, which are domain-based. So the idea is that we let the industries inform us. What are the pain points? What are the problems? Okay, we want to tackle and co-create. And then we engage the researchers in particular so that they can co-create and have the opportunity to translate the innovative ideas and technologies and solutions that can address the industry problems and societal challenges. So we put them through the POC and market validation schemes so that in a way, it helped de-risk them a little bit. So we put a lot of emphasis at this stage. And then, of course, again, thanks to Cyberport as well as Science Park, we co-develop different incubation programs so that we can send our startup teams into those programs and so that they can receive more resources as well as support. But one thing I want to share is that at PolyU, we have a very distinct advantage. That is our industrial center, 工業中心. I think we are the only university that has this industrial center. So of course, other universities also have the incubation space, but we'll put together the strengths of industrial center, which to us is a maker space. Okay, so in which the startups can have the prototyping, proof of concept, together with the design for application of the School of Design, etc. So hopefully, through the upstream part of the university ecosystem, we let our startups in better shape before they develop further under the incubation programs of either Science Park or Cyberport. All right, so I don't want to go through all this, but again, we do have an put up investment fund to support scale-ups. But here, I want to share that our PolyU's philosophy is not to pick the winners, but we aim to nurture winners. So with this philosophy, we set up our entrepreneurship investment fund. Of course, initially, the fund size is not that substantial, but hopefully through this, we gain some experience together with the partnership with like other investment fund of Science Park or Cyberport, and together with other co-investment partner, so we can support our startup to scale up. And at the same time, recognize the gap of seeding stage. So that's the reason why we'll better utilize government's TISU and TISU funding to fill the gap of 1 to 3 million. So that briefly recaps our ecosystem framework. But I think I want to pose a question, is that is funding the only important element? Absolutely no. So that's why my topic is beyond funding, because we do believe that creating a conducive ambience is very important. So I think that we at PolyU, we adopt a number of measures. For example, we make the IPs more available for adoption, including the trial IP licensing schemes. And we're going to collaborate with other R&D centers to strengthen the innovation impacts. That's one. Another one is about the flexibility for allowing our inventors to spend more time to work for the startups. I think PolyU is is a forerunner in creating more flexibility for our professors in this area to work for the startup companies in this area. So among all, what about the fifth point, that is measurement and recognition? I think I do understand the society has a lot of discussion in this area, but apart from the university's own effort, what about the sector-wide focus? For example, how would the government evaluate the university performance in tech transfer and commercialization. Would there be any resources implications? So far, no. So shall we consider this perspective, for example? So maybe this is an area for discussion later on. So to sum up, again, I just want to reinforce my point that the role of university is about talent, nurturing talent. And at the same time, and perhaps we shall focus more in addressing the last mile support for commercialization. And again, disruptive and proprietary technologies would give good business models, and teams would draw investors for sure, but it's never easy. So I think based on our interaction with our startups, so oftentimes it is not that easy to have all these essential elements. So again, as an enabling university, we have to work closely with our partners, either government, incubators, investors, etc., to build a better INT ecosystem in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lou, for your insight. It was a great presentation and great insight to everyone here. And next, may I invite Mr. Peter Yan to share how Cyberport bring innovation to fruition. Mr. Yan, please.
Thank you. It's really, happy to see so many industry experts here, and also even more happier to see some of the startups here too. Let me see where there are a few who, say hi to me just now. That are Cyberport startups. I'm particularly happy, to see that, and also PolyU alumni. So, I think before I start my presentation, I would like to, respond a little bit to what Dr. Lou mentioned just now about, the technology transfer approach number 4, which is a major part of your elaboration, which is, I think, very, very important, or becoming even more and more important in the last few years, with the startup environment, the entrepreneurial, environment really developing so rapidly, and particularly in Hong Kong. Now, I share also this yesterday an article that I read from McKinsey about the contribution of startups in the US. In the last year, actually, a significant portion of the new jobs are actually created by startups. So the economic contribution scenario, jobs contribution scenario, I think has changed. The landscape has changed. Startups has become more and more important, and it is crucial that universities now also started, in particular the last couple of years, focus very much on entrepreneurship development. And as Dr. Lou mentioned, a lot of initiatives that work with us, Cyberport and the Science Park on incubation. It is very important that we build this pipeline in a way, for subsequent commercial funds to invest in. They can have in a way, an incubated or a protected environment for them to first try things out, the proof of concept that Dr. Lou mentioned. And also with, like, for example, in Cyberport, we have the commercial environment for them to, try to implement their application in our arcade, in our hotel, in our offices, and so on, before they actually go out and promote their solutions to really the commercial enterprises, the established enterprises, and also to attract funding with already references from Cyberport, Science Park, and so on. So these, I think, are very important initial steps that we need to continue to really push forward. Now, I started with sort of stages of different investments, funding, and so on, not to explain to you what these are, but more to highlight one thing, that is the importance of the early stage pre-A seed stage of development. What I think Dr. Lou shared, and also what Cyberport has been doing in the past, many years, is really to focus on developing, nurturing an early startup community. Now, this is also what we have achieved in the last few years in particular. Let me share with you some figures so that you can appreciate, better how this, has changed. In 2018, early 2018, a couple of our past directors are here, so they are well aware of these numbers, Duncan and Professor Chan. We celebrated Cyberport's community going beyond 1,000 in early 2018. And now, after about 4 years, and very likely in this fiscal year, we're going to celebrate the passing of 2,000. Now we have 1,800 something. So what we are saying is that in the past 4 4+ years, we have achieved an 80-something% increase of our community size in startups and so on, which we have achieved, since 2018 or since 2003 when we first, started operation. So 15 years, yeah. So that's the change that we are seeing. That the startup community is really becoming very vibrant, and this, of course, doesn't really happen just because of funding, but a lot of changes in government policy, in the university focusing on entrepreneurship and so on. And in the early startup stage, what we have been doing is really to very actively facilitate, the investment of, really the early investors, the angel investors, the family, small offices, some more, aggressive, institutional funds, and very importantly, also corporate funds. Yeah. And of course, when we talk about funding in a much broader sense, not just investment, we should definitely include, the university's fundings, Cyberport funding, incubations, subsidies, and so on. Now, all these are part of the nurturing funding that we provide to develop this very vibrant startup community. But then, of course, this is not something that will continue to be very, very smooth and without challenge. I'll cover that later. We are actually, facing significant challenges in the past 6 months or so. Yeah, or probably more than that in the past 9 months or so. And we need some other sort of booster to make sure that this already very vibrant and well-developed startup community can continue to flourish and continue to, for some of the very successful ones, to scale up. Yeah, this funding in a way is like the nutrients that we pump or push to them for them to grow further. So without this continued nutrients to them, and this community, the growth of this community will, of course, we need to seriously review. Yeah. So what I'm trying to again, elaborate a little bit is on the Cyberport, the early startup support. Now, many of you probably are aware of the funding that we provide. On top of providing our incubators a 2-year free, office, we provide also our subsidy, our funding, which we do not take any, equity back. So this is not an investment, but more a grant, to them. It's investment in the nature of investing in the people, in the talents, in entrepreneurship for Hong Kong, but not so much in the strict sort of commercial investment. This 1.1 million covers different stages of programs. Yeah. And with the the support of our with the government and also our directors, including Professor Chow, we are trying to really strengthen further this kind of support so that we can then build a pipeline, for the commercial spin-off and so on to be successful. this support ranges from the very early stage. Let me see, this is right. The very early stage of a university, cooperation, which Dr. Lou mentioned just now, to seed funding when they only have an idea about what exactly it is, and they do not even have to have a company established. It can be an individual, a student, often a student who has a brilliant idea, or someone that is working in a corporation who come across with a spark of brilliant ideas. Then they can actually apply for this funding to turn this idea into a business plan or application prototype. Then they can move on to the incubation programs, and then move on to the scale-up acceleration programs and the overseas expansion programs, and so on, to get all the supports with about 1.1 million altogether. So these are the things that we do, and of course we do not stop there. We will continue actually to which we have set up a Cyberport venture capital fund, what we call a Cyberport macro fund, with 400 million Hong Kong dollar from our reserve to invest in the more promising startups that need support. And with this, we actually do not just look at it as an investment, which as a commercial investment, which I believe the university also look at their similar funding this way, and that is to actually give them an endorsement, a seal of approval, so that they are in a better position to attract commercial funding. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have only 5 minutes left. Yeah. Thanks for reminding. So I'll skip some of the details. Now, these are just some idea to share with you the point that I've just made. This is the investment sort of cumulative fund raised by the Cyberport startups that over the years. You can see the year 2020 to 2022 is actually the most critical time. Yeah, that you can see sort of the hockey stick phenomenon. But then you can also see starting this year, actually this becomes flat. In fact, starting the second half of last year, the situation has already become quite critical. But still, we have significant increase because of one very successful startup, and that is Animoca Brands. And that most of you are aware that they, in a way, now become the leader in the metaverse, development. So these are some signal of additional work that we need to do. Now, I mentioned just now the setting up of our Cyberport Macro Fund with the objective of really trying to induce more commercial investment. And we have a figure here I would like to share with you, and that is the co-investment ratio of 1:8. So what we are saying is that $1 that we invest through our Cyberport Macro Fund, we have generated another additional $8 of commercial investment into these startups that we have chosen. So this is the effect of the endorsement, the seal of approval that I mentioned. And this is how things should probably work with other similar platform too. Okay, so now going to commercialization, I mentioned just now, we are leveraging on our infrastructure to also create the environment for these startups actually to test out the operation. Now, when it comes to commercialization, a lot of startups actually already have very good application, very good technology innovation, business model innovation, and so on. But then what they are lacking, or they need further enhancement, is to adapt themselves to the actual operation environment and to collect relevant experience in their setup and so on, in their services and so on, so that they can then, when faced with established enterprises, they are much better prepared to promote their application to the commercial environment. So this is also something very important, because at Cyberport, we have our hotel, which is a commercial environment. We have our offices. We have our shopping arcade. Now all these are very practical environment physical, practical environment for them to really experience, to obtain more operation experience. We also created a sort of a soft infrastructure for them to test things out. We have a data service platform that we created a number of different sandboxes. You know, many of you probably are aware of the government I Am Smart. Yeah, the first pilot actually is done on one of these sandboxes, so that our fintech company, the first to integrate, you know, the EID or the I Am Smart government platform to help them do KYC, know your customers, to help them do all these kind of identification or identity authentication things. So these are the things that we are able to provide at Cyberport to integrate, you know, also with the university to see how, you know, we can, you know, facilitate and better leverage each other's strength so that we can use our resources more effectively and create impact faster. Yeah. All right. Okay. I'll skip some of these probably. Yeah. What I think, one of the, this one I can't skip. Yeah. This is one key area, latest development, which is also very important for making sure that there is this continuous nutrients, you know, coming in to facilitate the scale up to continue to be successful. The government has very, you know, wisely set this up. And of course, this is not just something come from the blue, but from many industry experts providing them inputs, you know, including many of you sitting here, Whitman, Duncan, and so on, I understand have been pushing, you know, for this, which is very important now. We have realized this in the form of a strategic tech fund, which sometimes are branded as the Hong Kong Temasek. Yeah. My time is up, you know, but just give me a couple of more minutes so that I can then, you know, elaborate some other key points. Now, this is very important because it basically helps some of the scale up with a larger ticket size to also, you know, get, you know, government support. And with this support, I hope to see something that's we have, you know, done in the past with the CMF, the Cyberport Macro Fund, is that the government endorsement comes in, and then we attract, you know, other commercial organizations, commercial funds to invest even more, you know, into these promising startups. So this is something that will be coming out in the next month and started in next month, and stay tuned. Yeah, right. I'll just skip some of this. Yeah, but basically the message here is that the global, you know, venture capital, you know, landscape is becoming definitely more and more challenging. Fortunately, you know, well, it's also the same, you know, happening in Asia, but to a lesser extent. And some of these figures basically show how significant things have changed or dropped in a way in the last 6 to 7 months, and to be honest, starting, you know, probably the middle of last year. So we have to really seriously look at this to sustain the development of this very important pool of startups that we have cultivated in the last 5 years or so. This doesn't come easily. Yeah, now we have this very strong base, very vibrant startup community, but then we need to sustain the nutrients so that they can then, you know, develop further, and especially for those really very promising ones. Now, many of you probably, or some of you here who has these entrepreneurial experience will understand. It is sometimes, you know, even worse if you are successful startups, because you are successful, you scale up. And when you scale up, you need more cash. And when the tap, you know, or the fund, yeah, suddenly, you know, stops, you are probably the first, you know, to then have to close down. If you are not successful, you didn't, you know, scale up so rapidly, you may not have this problem. You can still have other ways, you know, to bridge this gap. But then if you scale up, in the past 1 or 2 years, because you are so successful, you are so promising, now you are facing even worse, you know, problems. So it is even more important that we, with the government's support on the strategic tech fund, really, nurture this further, to sustain them further so that they can go through this difficult stage. And in maybe 1 or 2 years, hopefully even shorter, they will get back on their feet again and really become very successful startups like the many of the unicorns or even companies like, GoGoX becoming, listed and so on, becoming successful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Yan, for your insight. And now may I invite Dr. Denis Yip to share his view on how ASTRI promotes technology R&D and commercialization. Dr. Yip, please.
They told me to be sitting on the stage, so for change of kind of positioning. Unlike what Miranda and Peter talk about on startup, I really want to talk about deep tech and how the whole funding scheme changed the deep tech environment. Actually, Professor Sun Dong came to ASTRI in the first week of work and actually missioned us to be doing the university tech transfer. And basically what he says is there a lot of real treasure in the university from 0 to 1, which is the deep tech technologies. And ASTRI also has a lot of 0 to 1 technologies. How do we change that to become 1 to 10? So I will be going through actually the approach that we have taken, the current progress so far. We face, of course, challenges, but how do we tackle that? So it's a 4-pronged approach. Basically, it's to enhance the whole ecosystem with improved coordination, but more of ASTRI and the Research Institute of Hong Kong working with the universities to really bring the basic research into commercialization. We did a study. All the top 6 universities in Hong Kong, 1,700 million UGC grant. But all the UGC grant is mostly on papers, not really on commercializations. And there are schemes on commercializations from ITC. For example, we talk about ITSP on platform projects or partner research projects or contract research. But on the ITSP on the platform projects, ASTRI actually add together all 6 universities. ASTRI is larger than all 6. So that's the piece that is missing is we need to kind of link the basic research together on the Research Institute and move it to commercialization. So I'm going to skip the ASTRI introduction piece, but basically we are really working on 6 tech initiatives right now: Smart City, FinTech, Digital Health, Intelligent Manufacturing, Integrated Circuits. Professor Philip Chan and us are working together, Metaverse, which is a new initiative that we started. So the role of ASTRI, as people have understood in the previous years, is actually only doing projects. So what we want to change is actually we are establishing what we call the ecosystem of technology in Hong Kong. So we have identified 6 ecosystems. Microelectronics, we'll be launching a microelectronics technology consortium with different university professors on the field, like Professor Tim Chan, Professor Philip Chan, Professor Henry Zhong, etc., into this ecosystem with Huawei, with ASM, with ZTE, with the different semiconductor parties to kind of move this together. Similarly, FinTech and Metaverse, we will be launching the alliance in the next few months. Smart City, IoT sensing, optics, and industrialization, AI, big data, and then 5G, open radio access network, and cellular vehicle to everything. The CV2X Chairman Wong, actually we had this morning a big press event with Shenzhen government. We are using the same 5.9 gigahertz 5G spectrum. And basically we'll be creating a technology that can actually have Hong Kong automated vehicles going to Shenzhen automated vehicles with the CV2X technologies. So you'll probably see more press tonight or tomorrow in this regard. But what ASTRI role is actually bridging the the whole ecosystem, but not the whole technology ecosystem. Very specific. So semiconductor, who are the parties, smart city on cellular vehicle to everything, who are the parties, IoT, who are the parties, etc. And if you look at the whole ecosystem, actually, universities in the upstream, HK, some of them are in the upstream. So we have collaborated with 6 universities right now. PolyU is, of course, one of them. And then we want to identify the opportunities and then going into what we call the ecosystem that I just talked about on the right side. Now, how do we do that? We strengthen the impact, improve the utilization of IP, enhance the technology research talent ecosystem. ASTRI has 1,000 plus IPs. Each university has 1,000 to 3,000 plus IPs. But most of the IPs today in Hong Kong are not used commercially. They're actually what I call treasure, right? Locked down in the treasure field and nobody really uses it. But what we want to do is actually what we call a background IP collaboration with university. So for example, PolyU has a scheme of IP that can connect with the ASTRI scheme of IP, and even in the future, NAMI or LSCM scheme of IP. And then we co-develop foreground IP and push it to commercialization. So we have signed the agreement with all 6 universities in this regard on co-IP collaboration. Now, co-IP, if you think about it, there are 2 things that is co. One is called a patent. So when we apply to a patent, we can be 50-50, 70-30, 80-20, etc. And then the second is future licensing revenue. What if I become a sense time? So who gets rich? So before we actually do the foreground IP, we need to decide with the professor, of course, negotiate how much % is ASTRI, how much % is the professor, so that in the future, who owns the patent, who co-apply the patents, who actually split the revenue of future licensing revenue. Okay. So we signed the 6 universities actually in the last few months, and we just signed 2, Baptist U and Hong Kong U last week. So all 6 have been signed. Actually, some of the HK also, but honestly, the focus is not so much on HK, but more with the 6 universities. And then what we want to do is actually kind of lay down the path of how do we apply funding from ITC on the platform research to partnership research so that the industry pay for it, and then to contract research, which the industry pay 100%. So for platform research, usually the industry pays about 20 to 30%, and then the government pays 70 to 80%. Partner research, the industry owns the IP, they pay 51%. Contract research, the industry pays 100%. So this is our path of commercialization that we can help the university professors to do it. A lot of professors do not want to apply for this kind of funding. First of all, it's not to their prime interest to commercialize. Number 2 is it's very painful. It takes a long time. And there are a lot of vetting questions that keep on asking. So actually, ASTRI is the expert on this. We have a team answering questions on the scheme. But actually, we want to help the professors to get the industry money, get the project going on, and go to the commercialization team. So the whole scheme, ASTRI will be the ownership of applying the ITF funding, secure the sponsor, fund the professor through what we call the other direct costs, manage the project with the professor, and then we share the success of IP ownership. Now, ASTRI in the history actually cares much about IP. I kind of convinced the board that IP ownership is not the most important thing in the world. IP commercialization is more important than IP owning. So honestly, in my scheme, I don't really need to own 100% of IP. We can actually own it with the professor. So how do we commercialize? We have 4 ways to commercialize. Number 1 is through the corporate IP licensing. We do that a lot. For example, China Resources want to solve a pain point. They ask ASTRI, they ask the university. So we join force together and then do the work, and then we license it to China Resources. So that's number 1. Probably 90% of the work are done, number 1. Now, number 2 is new. For example, we have a project going on with our government, chatbot, right, with the disciplinary force on actually 錄口供 transcript chatbot. And in the previous world, right, we did a lot of great job to make this 89% accurate. The second best in the industry is 81%. So previously, the police actually very satisfied, and then they asked us to roll out. And then we cannot roll out because ASTRI does not have system integration force. So what we do right now is through an RFQ and tender, we partner with system integrators. So right now we have already signed an MOU with Lenovo, PCCW Solutions, Deloitte Digital, and China Mobile Hong Kong. They represent about 4,000 workforce in system integration. So they will roll out the projects on replicable technologies, and then they will pay us the license. And the us is ASTRI plus university. That way, the university professors and the universities can have a revenue stream. They can gain money, not only for startup or venture capital, but also the system integrator can actually roll out the technology on commercialization. So number 3 is working with existing startup. We do that a lot to complement startup technology. And number 4 is venture capital spinoff. We don't do that a lot. We do 1 or 2 a year. So this year we did one with ASTRI. They actually have 3 people that come outside from ASTRI and then start their own business supported by VC, very successful. They come back to us and work on projects with us, license our technologies. And this way, eventually, we might have very successful. So we want 4 types of commercializations that can work with the university scheme. So it's an all-win value proposition, and we can actually push for more in the ecosystem, not just on getting the fund, getting the scheme running, but can we do joint PhD program? We already have joint PhD program with SUST, Namsan科技大學, right? Their PhD thesis student actually is doing our projects, and it's very stable because the PhD needs 3 years. So we complete our projects, they finish the PhD, and they might even work for us. Very good scheme. But how come Hong Kong does not have it, right? If you look at Belgium, right, the IMEC, they have joint PhD programs. That's university plus research institute, and then very successful on joint PhD program. But Hong Kong actually still does not have it. So I think at the end, not just working on commercialization, but how do we cultivate the talent is also quite important. So in the scheme of 0.1 to 1.10, what we want to do is really on the basic research IP, we want to work together, push for platform research project so that we can actually have industry project that can get from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, and then really finally the contract research. All this can be done through the existing government funding scheme, and all this have been done before. So what we want to do is really promote this and working with the universities, of course with PolyU, to get this rolling. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yip, for the enlightening view. And shall I invite Science Park's Head of Investment, Mr. Raymond Wong, to share how to propel success in commercialization and impactful innovation. Mr. Wong, please.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation of us to share with you a little bit of our insight as to in terms of the funding and how to do commercialization. And before doing that, I just want to give a snapshot of what Science Park is doing for the past few years. There's about 400K square meters of land. We have offices and labs, 1,100 companies there. We have a working population of 18,000 people there. And in terms of incubation, we have incubated in the past years of about 900 incubatees. About 80% of them are still in business. And in terms of some of the investments we have done for the past 5 years, Cumulatively, the companies in Science Park has raised about 72 billion Hong Kong dollars with over 220 projects. And similar to what Cyberport is doing for a venture fund, for every dollar that we invest, we also attract about $16 of external private capital. And before moving on to the different funding schemes, I want to talk a little bit about the value creation that Science Park is doing. I think funding is only one part. What we provide is the physical space and the lab spaces. We have supporting a lot of semiconductor development in terms of, and also the biotech companies. So we have very expensive and very state-of-the-art lab facilities that can be shared by all startups, and that will lower the cost. Second is that we have a partnership team. We have partnered up with about 250 partners, local and international. I think the key thing is to attract them to come to Science Park and tell us their pain points. With that, we know what we need to solve, and then we solicited solutions from our companies and offer them solutions. And I think the first thing for startup is to find the right thing to solve. Third, talents. We have a group that help to recruit talents. As Professor Lau has mentioned, I think talents is very rare in Hong Kong. And we have specific departments that help recruit talents for the startups. Fourth is our incubation program. And we have a series of incubation programs here listed here. Not only they provide the funding, they provide some of the skill sets that an entrepreneur has to have, and also some of the mindset that researchers and also investigators needs to have change in order to become a successful founder in startups. With that, I want to go into some of the funding programs we have. From the left-hand side, we have Lean Launcher, which is very early stage companies, going all the way to the right side, which is the global expansion. So we have specific programs tailored for different stages of companies. For the Lean Launchers, they could be from originate from universities, a professor with a few students, they come up with an idea. And Lean Launcher is basically as a 12-week experiential program in which we will gather together with the mentors, investors to talk to them. Two objectives. One is to change their mindset from a researcher to an entrepreneur. Second is to tell them a little bit of what kind of skill sets they need to possess in order to run a startup successfully. Second, ideation is actually more related to with universities as well. We work with the different universities, including PolyU, and some of the co-incubators and how to run a co-incubators. And we love to talk to university students to think of gather the university students as well as alumni, some of the ideas, and together we will provide the incubation services. Now, incubation, the third one is are the companies that we recruit and based in Science Park. So we have a group of trainers and account managers to look after each and every of the incubators. And we'll provide the services, let them know, give them support in terms of how they do manufacturing, small batch, large batch, how to do designs, how to bridge into GBA, and also provide services to some of the pain points that is related to us from the partners. And incubation, we have for general ones, we have about $1.5 million per company. And for the IncuBio, which is specific for the biotech companies, we have $6 million for them. Acceleration, this is a program that we want to help the company to grow outside of Hong Kong. And that the support is up to about 4 million Hong Kong dollars. And that will help them to grow the revenue and also grow outside of Hong Kong. And the last one is the global expansions. This is called the Elite Program. We are subsidizing, reimbursing the R&D expenses they spent in Hong Kong Science Park, and is 1-to-1, up to 20 million Hong Kong dollars. So with all these different programs, we have specific amount and also support for different stages of companies. And also for venture fund in Science Park, we're managing about 600 million Hong Kong dollars. And we have invested in about 24 companies in Science Park. But I think the key thing is we have attracted a bunch of early stage investors to co-invest with us. We see ourselves as a role of the government is to acting as a catalyst only. So for every dollar that we invest, we attract a whole bunch of co-investors. Sometimes they are local, sometimes they're international, and so that they will get to know Hong Kong a little bit better, get to know about the earlier stage investor, so that they convert them from very traditional or investors into investing into earlier stage. So this is the role that we're playing. And Hong Kong government has spent about 10 billion Hong Kong dollars into this Inno Hong Kong initiative. And this initiative, there are 28 centers being formed together. The key is to collaborate to find the brains from Hong Kong and also the brains from international to bring them together. There are 28 centers, 3 of which are from PolyU, is AI design. One is centers for advancement in safety and reliability, and the other one is Center for Eye and Vision. And those 3 are from Poly universities, they're professors from universities. They're collaborating with offshore, outside of Hong Kong, the top-notch professors, and they find the right area, both in healthcare and also in AI, robotics, to land in Hong Kong and do the research and mostly the development. And the role for the Hong Kong government is actually to help them to commercialize. So for each one of them, we're looking at what type of technologies, what kind of spin-off that they have that we can commercialize them. So this is another funding in terms of helping research turning into spin-offs. I want to spend a little time on the biotech area, because this is the area that Science Park has been collaborating with the different stakeholders in terms of from collaborating with universities, the research institutes, from strategic corporates, from the government and industry associations, as well as from the government funding, and also with the private capital, from the private equity, venture capital, family offices, strategic investors. And this is sort of like a circle that of stakeholders that we are serving, hopefully bringing together. And the aim is to commercialize the products. And here, just another page on the some of the deep diving as to what Lean Launcher is doing, and also turning from Lean Launcher, earlier stage ideas from a university, into incubation and accelerating the scale up, and all into the larger startups. So here, another pain point that we find in Hong Kong, other than in funding, I think it's also is the talent. So we have also, as I mentioned, the talents that we are growing. And I think from, we have an Inno Academy, a department that recruits a lot of talents, and that will also have different programs for Science Park, for them to actually to stay in Science Park for a few months and then allocate them to the partners company for them to learn and from them to get experience. These are graduates, fresh graduates, or also at university students as well. And so with that, I think this is a future, a plan for Science Park is actually quite funding oriented. There are 3 goals that we have. Number 1 is are the companies in Science Park in terms of the total valuation. And this is very related to what the funding has to do that goes into startup. The second is the amount of funding that are raised by the companies in Science Park. And the third one is the number of startups who are to be grown. And so those are the very long-term targets in 2030 that we have set for ourselves, aiming to build Hong Kong as an international INT centers. With that, actually, I'm the first one that wraps up my presentation early, but I want to address what Professor Lau has mentioned earlier, the pain points. The one is that I think it's important to have partnership that you would be able to learn from the industry players what the pain points are. And that is the starting point of what startups are for. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that I've been in investments for 25 years. And I have learned that actually funding will come if you have a good company. In order to find funding, focus on what you're doing, solving what pain points, collaborating with the partners, and then funding will naturally come with you. And so that's my some of the insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wong, for your inspiring sharing. Entrepreneurship can be defined as a sum of innovation and commercialization. And let's all welcome our final speaker, Dr. Charleston Sin, to share some tool sets to achieve such purposes. Dr. Sin, please.
Thank you. So what an honor to come back to the university. I work part-time to talk about entrepreneurship. So I am, to disclose, I'm a professor of practice of the business school. So I teach. So if you found my presentation interesting, you can register for my class. And so what I want to talk to you about is quite different from what the PReCIT for speakers. So I know Miranda a long time. I'm a good friend of Peter's. Denis and I used to work for a similar company, and also Raymond is a long-time investment. So, but this time I want you to look at it from a very different angle, because they've been talking about macro. I want to talk about the more on the personal level. So therefore, I pick a topic called the good, the bad, and ugly about the startup career. Just like what Raymond have just said, startup need money. The question is, when Denis talk about from 0 to 1, I'm talking about from 0 to 0.1. So how are you going to build a plan that people is willing to do that? And I see that Kelvin is there. He's my student, and he just get, by the way, he gets CCMF 100,000 already. So because I gave him some advices, that's good. Now, let me tell you a story first. I worked in the industry for 25 years in the high-tech industry. I spent a couple years in Silicon Valley. I worked 18 years for company Cisco. And I have a Cisco in my blood. And this is the headquarters that I have. Now, if you don't know about Cisco, that's okay, because of, you guys are very young. And Cisco is very famous on one thing, acquisition. They buy company. So M&A is a regular. At Cisco, from the 30 years Cisco in existence, they acquired 222 acquisition of it. And in the revenue in 2022 is $52 billion. I was Cisco for 18 years. I participated in 4 acquisitions myself, and it was a lot of fun. Cisco is a B2B market and has been still a very successful company in the world. However, in the Silicon Valley, there's another one. Apple. I used to live in Cupertino myself. So therefore, and this interesting structure building that I had never lived next to it. So now, when you look at Apple in compare with Cisco, and remember, Steve Jobs passed away in 2011. Now, during that time, people will think that Apple is over, because innovation is no longer existing. However, when you look at this chart of the revenue in 65 all the way, now last year they make about $365 billion. Of it, some of the products are new. For example, this Apple Watch is new, right? And I don't know whether you know, this little product, the airport. This airport, do you know how much revenue they make in last year? $12 billion. $12 billion. So in the past, in a big company, this is how we innovate. We buy company. We buy company, right? We like Cisco, we buy company. At Apple, they had do internal development. Some of them do the corporate venture, some of them do the corporate assessment, acceleration. These are the methodology when I was young, and these are the company is actually using. However, in the past, when I was at Cisco, I worry about Huawei, I worry about Nokia, I worry about Ericsson. But now, in the industry, what they worry about is no longer Huawei, it's the little guy. Because all this dynamic little guy is taking the market very quickly. In the world of Web3, in the world of metaverse, it's actually taking on the market very differently. Now, and therefore, for people that are not a scientist training, and I have a good news for you, because the good news is being an entrepreneurship is a new, being an entrepreneur is a new cool thing. It's something that is quite interesting. Now, let me tell you about MIT definition of entrepreneurship. MIT define entrepreneurship as innovation or invention or an idea. It doesn't have to be technological innovation. It can be just a business model innovation, right? And entrepreneurship is equal to idea, a great idea with commercialization process. That's the two different things. A lot of time, people actually get mixed up about commercialization is a follow-up of the invention. It is not. It's actually two different things. However, if you look into that, technology entrepreneurship is a technologically invention plus commercialization. Essentially, what we're talking about is a sustainable business plan. The keyword here is a sustainable business plan. The question is, how are you going to build that? And this is a map, right? And in the past, when people haven't done entrepreneurship before, right? And that they think that doing entrepreneur is a straight line. So Kelvin, I'm going to tell you that your startup, checkmate, you want to be in a straight line. It will not be. It will be like that. However, maybe from A to B, you can take a curve. By the time you're doing it, you found that you're actually in C. Now, why it is important? It's because of recently, last 3 years, I have participated in 5 different startups myself in different domains. And I know that firsthand, doing a startup is very different from doing a corporate innovation. So with that, I'm going to ask you to play the video for you. It's a 3-minute video.
The first lesson we teach our students when they arrive here on campus is define your terms. Before you solve a problem, it's essential to have clarity as to what everyone is talking about. The first term we need to define in this course on entrepreneurship is entrepreneur. Entrepreneur comes from a French word that means to undertake, which is very appropriate because what an entrepreneur does is they undertake a journey to create a new venture, and that involves risk. There's a common misperception that entrepreneurs are gamblers and they love to take risk. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. What entrepreneurs know how to do is, through a rational, systematic process, manage risk to their advantage. The story of entrepreneurs being mad geniuses who take ideas and turn them into gold is just a story. Beyond the misconception that entrepreneurs are undisciplined gamblers, there's a few other myths that we need to dispel right away. First of all, that they're born not made. Secondly, that they're particularly intellectually gifted. And third, that they're mercurial individualists. And fourth, maybe most of all, they're just lucky. These are all whopping lies. The reality is much different. If you take a wildly successful entrepreneur and you peek behind the image of the chaos-loving visionary, and you'll find something much different. You'll find a group of remarkably disciplined people. Steve Jobs once famously said, "It's more fun to be a pirate than to join the Navy." So here, we're going to embrace that pirate spirit inside of you, and we're going to add to it the execution skills of a Navy SEAL. And we're going to have a heck of a lot of fun doing it. So good luck and welcome to Disciplined Entrepreneurship.
This is Professor Bill Olet. He's a successful entrepreneur. He sold his company to IBM. And with that for $500 million. And after that, he published a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship in 2012. This book has been translated into 20 different languages around the world. It's known to be the #1 entrepreneurship book in the world. So at MIT Note, we are here, not in Hong Kong, not because of we want to train up, we want to get more startup company. That's not what we want. This is the job of the university. What we are doing here is one and only one thing. We train up talent. We develop talents for the ready, for the company, for the startup to use. Disciplined entrepreneurship is a 24-step. And if you're interested in it, and come talk to me, I'll come join my class and pay tuition. And as he mentioned that, entrepreneur need to have the spirit of a pirate. Look at an opportunity and capture the opportunity. And also, you have the skill as a Naval SEAL because of their process you can actually follow to make yourself more successful. You cannot be one or the other. You need to be the both. That is something that we like to talk about. On the discipline entrepreneurship, we talk about 6 different clusters of questions. The #1 questions we always ask is, where is your customer? And may I add that my key question to you is, how are you getting to your first pay customer? First pay customer. Who will that be and how are you going to get to them? That is the #1 question on the discipline entrepreneurship. Now, in addition to that, there are other methods. Another one is by Stanford, another school in California. And they, with the design school, they have the design thinking, the process, empathy, define, idea, prototype, and test. Now, with this method, it's a very good method to be used for design thinking. As I mentioned to Kevin, right? Remember that? I taught you guys in the class. The whole process, the whole reason for design thinking is to get the messiness out and build your confidence that you know this is the way to go. That's the iterative pivoting process that you need to go through. Another one is, I really like it recently. I learned it from AWS. It's called the thinking backward. In other words, you imagine your success, the press release that you have on that day, and thinking backward about what are the things you need to get done. This is a very good working backward methodology. Another methodology is what we call the business model canvas. I learned it from the University of Chicago. It's a very effective way of doing a building block on the business plan with value creation and building infrastructure. Now, what I've been saying is that on the one side, we have the tool. On the other side, we need to think about technological innovation. And on top of that, we have 2 types of setting. First setting is a corporate entrepreneurship setting in the corporate, just like what I did at Cisco. Another one is what Kevin Checkmate is doing, that in a startup setting, you are using the tool to help you to develop the business plan that you have. And the question is how to get funded. So therefore, in addition to my friend Peter, he will start to write a check about 100K, and also Raymond, another 100K, and Kevin, KTEO, write you a check of 120K. And these are the funding that you can get. Just remember one thing, very simple. Entrepreneurship is equal to idea and a sustainable business plan. This business plan is a plan that you can use, just like what Raymond said, focusing on what you do, and the money will follow you. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for Dr. Sin sharing. And would you mind to share a couple of your thoughts with us before we go into another session?
Yep.
As you know, we have a lot of audiences with a startup background, and
Yes.
it's really an honor to have you with us today. So from your perspective, which element is the most important in securing funding from investors? Your advice, please.
Oh, number one is focusing, just like what Kevin just did, right? When he presented to Peter, 6 minutes presentation, no more, no less. And that is the discipline of getting your whole idea in the very short idea. That's one. Secondly, look into your customer and first pay customer. That's the second thing. The third area I would say is that focusing on the execution. Idea is $1 a dime, is a dime a dozen, but execution separate boys from girl or girls, boys from men and or girls from women. So therefore, this is, remember that execution separate good from bad.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
your advices. And it's time to foster fruitful brainstorming at a panel discussion session.
Okay.
And so Dr. Sin, would you please join them on
Oh,
stage first?
okay, I
Yeah.
thought I can go.
And you will be joined by other speakers as well, and our moderator, Professor Choi, the co-director of our center, to kick off the discussion panel session. To start our panel discussion session, without further ado, may I pass the time to Professor Choi, please?
Thank you. Thank you. Very good afternoon. And we have a great lineup here. And I'm sure all of you have been inspired with the presentation that has been given by our great speakers. But before that, our center always give you surprises, because in addition to the 5-star speakers here, in fact, we have invited 2 more speakers who is going to share with us about their experiences of as founders of the startup. And again, in line with the university motto, to learn to apply for the benefit of the mankind. I'm sure in the coming 2 speakers, which is with us here already, and they're going to share us about the success story. The first one that I would like to introduce is Mr. Jason Leung, and he's the founder and the director of Vision Science and Technology Company Limited. And Mr. Leung and the team of Professor Po Chi-ho, the former head of the School of Optometry of PolyU, have worked together to commercialize several defocus incorporated soft content, DISC, technology products using the technology from Professor Cho's team. And the DISC lens jointly developed by them effectively retards the progressions of myopia by approximately 60% amongst Hong Kong children aged from 8 to 13. And then another new product named MyOldisc is planned to launch in December 2022 or January 2023. To know about the successful research commercialization story, may I invite Mr. Leung to say a few words about your unique experience. Mr. Leung, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jackson Leung from VST, startup company supported by PolyU, and I'm happy to join this meeting this afternoon. And we can say we are a successful startup. We set a startup in 2016. Up to today, we're still going, and then have a new product every 2 or 3 years. And our focusing is myopia control product for everybody, not only for Hong Kong people, for Chinese, and for the global, any people get myopia. And we are success because first, we understand the market, because I'm working for the optical industry for more than 30 years. And I'm one of the first researchers in Polytechnic for myopia control. So we understand the market, and we have experience, build up a team, understand what the need of the patient and how to develop the product, because I have some experience in the manufacturing. And luckily, we have a lot of friends in my career time, past 30 years, and meet a lot of people. We understand how to build a team to understand the market and how to make the product benefit to the society. This is very important. Another is supported by this university. We are alumni. I'm the first batch of optometry graduate here. So very happy that we get support from this university to make a startup. And my friend, my classmate, Professor To, idea, we always start, actually, more than 25 years ago, we started the same idea, but if after some time, we decided to set up a startup. And very luckily, we have a chance because globally, people understand IOP is very serious, increase everywhere. So our product is just meet the need of the market, very important. The market needing, so I do it. And another one is that we have a team for R&D team, step by step to build up, to set up some project to develop new product. The first generation is 3-month replacement contact lens. Second generation is the daily disposable contact lens for market control. And this is the new one. We will launch very soon. We say that this is the Polytechnic U 85th anniversary product for market control. This is a product decided by Professor To, manufacturing by Professor Benny Zhang's team. Very Polytechnic product. This is one. So we work together.
I think Jackson, you make us proud of your achievements. Yes. Thank you very much. And right now we move on to the next one, and we have also another speaker here, Professor Lee. And Professor Lee is the co-founder of the Grand Rise Technology Limited, and also the professor of Department of Applied Biology and Chemical Technology of PolyU. So, Professor Lee, would you like to say a few words about what is the key to success on commercializing research concepts and make innovation widely accepted in the market?
Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to share some of my experience in my startup journey. And so the key to success, and I try to summarize in a few points. The first, when we start the company, I already have already built the innovative technology platform. It means through my more than 20 years research. In other words, I'm ready, already have the technology ready to go. So this is the first thing. And then I was lucky to meet the partner who is able to help me to scale up the process. So for us, scale up was the bottleneck for a long time. I already have the technology before, but could not scale up, especially we are working on the chemical industry. I need a chemical plants to do all this commercialization. So, and now I have the scale up facility. And then the most important is a sellable product. And so once we have this all the technology and scale up facility, so what are we selling to? So just like the professor just mentioned, find your first customer. And this is a very important. Who do we sell to? And so at that time, our company was set up in 2019, and in 2020, basically the pandemic start, and people's habits start to change. Now people are using much more disinfectant. And at that time, we discovered most of the disinfectant in the markets are chemicals or toxic heavy metals. So they are also have a very short time. Curing time basically means you need to reapply frequently. So at that point, we found our sellable features, which is that we can develop a product based on our technology to provide a new disinfectant which are safer, have a longer effective and also long lasting, and also with the ESG concept. So the reason is that because our product starts with the food waste, we are starting from the hydrogen, which is food waste, and we are able to turn this material into a nanomaterials, and which are capable of forming a coating on the substrate surface. So the coating has a very good film forming ability and also rub resistance. So therefore, our disinfectant now can last for over like 180 days or even longer time and without reapplying it. So I think our product address the pain point of the market. And this is the safety issues and effective durability issue, and also the sustainability issues. So even though this disinfectant is a very competitive market, and there were many disinfectants available in the market, but we can see we are still moving forward because of this very important concept, which are much better than the current products. So I think this is my experience on, we're still working on it and still on this journey.
Thank you once again for Professor Lee. May I invite all of you to take a quick hand to vote. Okay, for those who are right now online, if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and we are going to take some of your questions if time allows, because in fact, during the registration, we have already invited the participants to put down a list of questions. In fact, I've got 2 pages of questions, and I lump all the questions together. And so please forgive me if I ask too many questions at one go, because there are a lot of very burning questions. But of course, before I rely on some of the questions that has been raised beforehand, I wonder whether there are people here on site here who would like to share your views or would like to raise any questions in relation to the 5 presentations, and also maybe the 2 of our colleagues too. So anyone? Please, Dr. Lawrence Lee.
Well, thank you for very interesting presentations, all members. Thank you. I'm going to ask a question which may not actually be very relevant, but for me it's meaningful because I'm going to ask it as a council angle. All right, because obviously what we're trying to do is to provide support, leadership, impactful to society in a meaningful way. And therefore, we like to engage all parties, and we appreciate all parties' engagement. So one of the things I come across is very difficult to know from council level what each department is doing. And therefore, very much 被动, not proactive, whereas leadership should be proactive. All right. And also, if we have engagement, there's so many different levels and different angles. So we range a little from ASTRI talking about deep science, right, to a more commercialization and money level. All are relevant, but how do we make sense of it from council angle is something I'm very interested in. I'm sure if we do it well, will help the whole university as well as the landscape. So I was discussing previously of actually doing not a supply side angle from the university, because we're obviously all going to provide supply side input anyway, it's part of the job. So if we're to put a managed solution platform to encourage contract research, so at different levels, different aim, providing different fundings and to different endpoints. And also we broaden the horizon so that it's not one university, different university, cross-sector, cooperation. What do you think of that angle of a platform where one can encourage engagement, more parties? And two, does it help? And to what extent that we should think about it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lawrence Lee, and anyone stage would like to respond? Peter.
Yes, if I may, this probably should be a response from the university, but then let me try to respond first. I think on the last point about not looking at this from the supply side, that is, what are the research being done at the university and so on, but more from the demand side, and make this happen in different universities, environments, and so on. Perhaps we may like to look at potential enterprise funding. So when we start with soliciting, support or funding from them, whether this is a fund that this is a support that they give to the university in the form of, naming a building or whatever, that we actually try to solve some of the problems that they have. Yeah. And see if there is a match of some of the research outcome to this funding. So this becomes more meaningful to them and also more meaningful to the university in terms of what you mentioned just now, of really making the R&D result, commercialize. Yeah. So that's just an idea. While you were talking, I was just thinking, maybe that's a way, to also get input from the demand side. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not really entirely thinking of the commercial side, because I think our core value is not entirely commercial. All right. I'm talking about the efficiency. All right. Efficiency, because rather than we think it may be, and then industry keeps bouncing back and forth, right? Where, for example, if an industry has already approached you guys, right, and you need something, and all you need to talk to us is a single unit entry point to see whether you can look at and solve the problems. You have the expertise, etc., and the appetite for that. That's really talking about efficiency of cross-fertilization, really.
Professor Lee, I think we have actually, from an ASTRI standpoint with the universities, not just PolyU, is actually when the industry wants to solve a pain point, they don't look for a general solution. They are very specific on, for example, we are talking about Chinese medicine, AI, and they know Baptist U has some technology there. They know ASTRI has some technology there. So they kind of search around. They know which two universities, which research institute have those. And previously, I mean, 10 years ago, probably nobody will really work together, right? So I think also the industry will not pay for full if it's a research project. They will fund you a little bit. They want the government to face the majority. So that's why when we look at the whole scheme of what government and research institute and universities are doing, I think we should work together on pooling the industry money on which pain point, and then how to apply for government funding like the ITF, and then try to solve the research issue so that it can go to the next step. I'm not talking about the product, but the next step. And then the next step goes into another project that the industry funds more, and then go to really the commercialization.
Maybe just a follow-on point. I agree with what was just said. And I think from Science Park, we are thinking more uniquely, more strategically from the Hong Kong point of view, because eventually a startup needs to be competitive. And what's competitive, and also what's competitive in Hong Kong. So we have three areas that we're focused on, like in addition to what the technology is. I think PropTech, property technology, FinTech, financial technology, and also it's a biotech, because we have the resources and the history and the testing ground for these areas in Hong Kong. And therefore, we want to make these as the three focus for Science Park to look at. So for example, for construction technology, PropTech, because we can work with industries associations, for example, CIC, and they will collaborate with a lot of different industry players, and they will come up with some common pain points. And from there, because they are the industry players, they know the industry well, they know which startups to pick, what to look for. I think with that, you'll be able to focus to pick the competitive startups. That's one point. The second is I want to share is that from Science Park point of view, we know that each university has different styles and they have different uniqueness. Therefore, we actually send our team to work with each and individual university to cater for their specialties for those style and to form co-incubators with them. So we can provide specific needs from each university. And so all these are just the focus points, industry and also university-wise.
I want to take it from a very different angle, right? So the angle I want to do is that because whenever I hear we talk about how many unicorn that we have generated, how many successful companies we generated, I think, in my opinion, that's the wrong message. We need to talk about failure, and we should allow failure. I remember when I was in Silicon Valley, like everyone just trying, pinking each other, and try something new. Now, recently, just a couple of days ago, I listening to a YouTube talk by a tech talk in Berkeley by a 25 years old named Alex Wong, W-A-N-G. He just he dropped out of MIT, found a company called the Scale.ai. He said that there's one sentence within what he said, it's actually struck me. The sentence is, at MIT, it is very hard everyone that not to build something. So it is a culture of building. Like other than here, I also teach another university in Port Fulham and also one in Causeway Bay, Clearwater Bay. What I found, what bothered me the most is I asked the student to take on a curious project, something curious that asked them to be creative. And most of them is still thinking inside the box because of they know that inside the box, they are not allowing failure. They are looking for an answer. I have been telling them that I don't have any answer. Just be as creative as possible. Don't think inside the box. And that culture of failure of my 5 startups I have, I can tell you that we pivoted every other month. And we have tried something that we fail and we start again. And those are the culture we have to build it in Hong Kong. There's no more right and wrong answer in entrepreneurship. Just trying. And when you try a couple of times, and then you may be finding a path, bumping into someone that you found it to be very helpful, and then do it again. Allow failure, allow trial, have the university. PolyU has a very strong focus on bringing application. And we need to, I think we need to bring that culture back to PolyU, that we are the application guy. Everyone builds something. Everyone allowed to be failed. That would be something that I would recommend.
Professor Chiu, to add one, more point on this topic is that now definitely agree with what the speaker just elaborated. I think one thing we for technology to commercialize, they need to meet certain demand. So then we tend to focus on how to enhance existing industries, support them, enterprises to make it more competitive and so on. I think that is one angle. But then for universities, I believe we should also look at another angle. That is how there are demand out there that are not yet uncovered. Yeah, they are really innovative things. Yeah, and there are quite a lot of research output which may not at this point, support existing pillar industries and so on, but then they are actually very promising. Yeah. Take, Cyberport as an example. Many years ago, in 2019, one of our startup actually tried to talk to me and try to, see if there is an opportunity for them to develop a new game, blockchain-based game. Yeah, which to me at that time is totally useless. Yeah, in a way. Yeah, and something that nobody, has thought of. And that company now is Animoca Brands.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And I've got a question, in fact, it's in relation to the IP system. So that is the question directed to our EVP, Miranda. So the question will be, some critics encourage the reform of IP system to facilitate research commercialization. What is your viewpoint?
Okay, thank you, Eric. And I think this topic is getting more attention these days, especially if we talk about how can we universities facilitate the commercialization of technologies. So I think so far still taking reference of the good practices in other countries and universities. So I think the obvious example we often quote is University of Waterloo. It's kind of like in inventor led IP. Of course, but it's not entirely inventor-led. It is still under different conditions that the IP can either be inventor-led or institution-led. So that is one model. And I understand that, for example, in mainland, because of the regulatory regime, there is a need to resolve the IP issues because its IP is a state-owned asset. So that is that there are pilot schemes to assign the IPs to the spin-off companies, for example. And in Hong Kong, I think because of historical environment, because so all along the university's IP are owned by the institutions. So I think there's still a lot of discussions and debate about whether it should continue to be institution-led or inventor-led. I think there are pros and cons. Because on the one hand, I understand there are discussions that if the IPs can be inventor-led, that will create more motivation for the inventor to commercialize the technologies. That is the argument. But on the other hand, the commercialization process can be very complicated. So it may be beyond the professional realm of the researchers. So I think one of my view is this topic needs to be very deliberated, and there may be no one single model that can better facilitate commercialization. I think it's always a question of willingness and the ability. So I think, say for PolyU, so we understand the pain point because the ultimate goal is to commercialize universities' intellectual properties. So that's the reason why the PolyU has been adopting a liberal licensing arrangement. Because we have to think, because as Dr. Lee mentioned, we have to not only to think from the university perspective, but from the industry, from the investor perspective. If we want to support those startups, so what about the investor perspective? So I think that part we have to consider. And I think to make things easier, for example, we've recently launched the trial licensing scheme so that we can provide opportunity for the inventor to test the market before they really form the startup companies, because as mentioned by Charleston, okay, think it through instead of rushing to form the startup companies. And that's one. Another one is as part of licensing process, we try to make it simple because we do understand the pain point of inventors or spending a lot of time talking to the tech transfer office on specific terms and arrangement that may jeopardize their motivation. So I think these are some of the measures we shall consider from university perspective when we further deliberate the overall direction within the whole higher education sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. I think Peter wants to respond.
Not really to respond, but more to supplement on one point that Miranda, mentioned just now, which and also, from Charleston earlier, which I totally agree, think through before you really embark on this entrepreneurship journey. I just want to supplement one thing, and there is this program from Cyberport that you can get 100,000 Hong Kong dollar, to support you in this thinking through process. So you do not have to have an application. You just have to have an idea, and then you apply for the Cyberport Creative Micro Fund with 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. With 6 months time, you can then put these ideas into something which can then be a commercial operation in future. Yeah.
If I may add on, so there's a model, just like Miranda said, there are another model. So their model at MIT called the engine. So in the past, MIT never put their own money into our own IP. So about 3 years ago, MIT created a group called, endorsed by the MIT president and Raphael Wright. And also, they also work with the Harvard president. So what they do is that they create a $200 million fund and funded on a research, not only deep tech, we're talking about tough tech, that the cycle of the VC is talking about 8 years cycle, not about 3 to 4 year cycle. And then with that, interesting enough that they actually have a team inside the engine team to help the internal inventor to get the license from MIT and from Harvard. So, and they actually help them to get the ID, because you know that the IP itself was actually funded by different people. And then they are helping them. The university, the engine is helping the inventor to go to the university to negotiate to get the IP right so that they can actually commercialize it. So from an IP point of view, this is quite inventive. And because of they have already done the $200 million for 17 companies, and they are actually getting a second trenches and getting the new building. And this idea has been endorsed by MIT and Harvard together. And this is another model for PolyU to consider.
Okay, Dr. Sin, please hold on with the mic, because one audience online put down something like this. I'm going to read it loud. Read it loud for you, because to Dr. Sin, how to intelligently approach the industrial practitioners to share their willingness to pay for an INT solution in order to de-risk the commercialization process? Question mark. Often, they can share many nice-to-have functions to solve the pain points, but for many of them, they may not be able to provide how much they are willing to pay once a solution is available. So, any views?
Can I take this question to my students so that they can answer?
It's very interactive here.
Yes, I think one keyword that we use is MVP, minimal viable product. So a lot of time we found that in cases that the problem set is too big and the solution set is too big. And we need to find a problem solution fit, which is the, Kevin, you remember, the overlapping of the Venn diagram. We call the problem problem solution fit. The keyword fit here, it really means that 啱啱好，唔多唔少，多一滯 is too difficult to make. 少一滯, no one is going to buy it. So that finding that idea, the approach that we have is to do primary market research. It means that you yourself need to go through the cycle of understanding the customer requirement. In such a case, you know it so deeply that you have the confidence this is really the customer and the feature they want. And that is something that we can get started. And then in the future, we can add more feature into it. But at the beginning, it's only the minimal portion of the solution that we actually start to use first and see how the market behave. And if they like it, go ahead, do that. If they don't like it, scrap it, do it again. So that would be something we use in our approach.
Just to add on to this point is that I think similar to Cyberport as well, Science Park has a team, as it's called a partnership team. Basically, we are talking to the industry players and we'll group them in different sectors and we'll try to interpret what the pain points are and identify, prioritize them, and then scout for solutions for them. So by doing this, it will make the process much efficient and less painful.
Okay, so may I invite anyone in this room to, oh yes. Please introduce yourself before you raise any questions.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Howard Chen from Carbon Exchange Hong Kong Limited. Actually, this question is not really about our operation or industry, but it's a general question about investment or idea generation in idea generation. So, well, because I used to work in the academia, and now I'm working in a startup. And I know that on one hand, if I want to produce something that is valuable for research, like writing a research proposal, I need to think of something like ahead of time, like 10 years time or 20 years time to create a good proposal. But especially if I want to say this idea is really a good research and development idea, I would need to do that. But at the same time, if I want to do innovation pitching, like the ones that I'm doing now in a startup, then I need to use the immediate market needs or market needs in 3 years' time in order to be successful to get funding. Because well, that's simple, right? You want to have, like what Dr. Sin said, you want to have things like, you want to have revenue. You want to tell others that I will have revenue in like 3 years' time to continue my business. But if you see that, but if you think it this way, then you will see, hey, there's a gap, right? Like a 7 to 17 years time of gap on funding. Like if you have an idea and you think that, hey, it's like it may be emerging in 5 years or 10 years. Where should I get the funding, right? The innovation pitching thing, well, it won't work because the market is not emerging. Like the research proposals, well, it won't work because it's not visionary enough. So that's my first question, even though I have to admit, well, really, as a startup, we need to get revenue right now. So this is not really my immediate question. But the second question is the one that I had, right? I had when I was graduating with my PhD, like my idea, the one that in my PhD thesis is still ahead of time, right? It won't serve the market need. Well, at that time, it was okay because my research was not really related to the immediate industry need or startup things. But say if I was a graduate student starting my career thinking about an idea, well, my research idea needs to be like 10 years or 20 years ahead of time. But at the same time, when I graduate, it's only 5 years, right? My idea won't be serving the market need. And so I won't be able to do any pitching. My idea won't be able to convince any investment house to start my technology startup. So what should I do? That's my first question. That's my second question. If I was a graduate student starting my my research idea to do the research, if he or she wants to be an entrepreneur, what's your suggestion?
So Peter.
Yes, I think this is just a suggestion, really. I like what you said. I think if I may, take what Charleston shared just now on the Amazon approach, working backwards. So 10 years from now, this is something that you may want, or that may, become, really, come to fruition. Okay, work back in, say, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, 7 years time. What are the forms, that will gradually lead to that 10 years outcome? Yeah. So that may be something, as a suggestion that you look on. But one thing I pick up, in your point made just now about, survival of a startup. Now, we often see in my encounter and my personal experience is that you often, in the process of your entrepreneurship journey, have a survival problem. Yeah. You may take on projects that give you the necessary income, cash, and so on to survive further, so that you can then, become successful later. But then often the case is that these projects becomes then a recurring thing, and you have forgotten the product, the solution that you have, really, started off, doing. So another sort of advice related to that is be selective on the projects that actually gradually will lead to the product that you originally started off trying to do.
Just one more comment is from Denis. I don't think the only way out is startup. I mean, I listen to all these questions. It's always, how do I make money now? How do I become a startup? I mean, if you have an idea that you'll be successful 20 years, you don't have to make a startup now, right? You can work on your project in university, in research institute, at a company, and then work on it. Let me give you an example, right? This morning we talked about Raymond Wong, cellular vehicle to everything. I gave the presentation on 20 years later, the whole Hong Kong can be very safe. There's no accident. It will run by mix of automated vehicle with connected automobile vehicles, etc. Now that's 20 years. So what's the roadmap between there? So what I told transport department is, okay, if we want to do this in 20 years, now we need to think about, okay, in 10 years time, how do we position the dynamic pricing of the free tunnels? Are you going to charge when you go to Central on peak hours? How do you use this technology to do it? That's 10 years time, right? In 5 years time, now, should we be all in the loop or all connected automated vehicles, right? And how do you position that? Should we have Lantau Island to be all connected vehicles? Because it's easy, it's only surrounding the Lantau Islands. How do we do that, right? And then you go back to 3 years time. In 3 years time, should I have a connected automated vehicles with cellular V2X with Science Park and Chinese University and the MTR station? Then the shuttle, actually, you control the traffic light so that the shuttle can be passed without traffic. So this is a step-by-step approach that you need to think. So in 3 years' time, you want to accomplish it. What are you doing this year? It might not be startup. It's just a technology focus.
Okay, maybe may I supplement? So maybe I didn't have time to go through it in my sharing, but I just want to give a proposal because at PolyU, we have a GPA startup postdoc program. I think the whole idea is that, especially for PhD graduates, I don't think you need to make a decision whether you want to run a startup company immediately or otherwise, because say for GPA startup postdoc program, it's a 2-year program, 3-year program. So the whole idea is to nurture INT talents and potential startup. I think that's the idea. So I think the program is that that will be a dual track. So for the GPA for the postdoc, you can continue to pursue your research under the supervision of the professor. And at the same time, you can also develop your commercialization pathway. And during the course, I think with the academic supervision, this academic supervisor can better inform the candidate whether there are different options, whether you can enhance your research, and at the same time, because in the program, we'll bring in industry mentor and advisors. I think that would be complementary because research, of course, is more blue sky and more forward-looking, but you have to live in the reality from a demand perspective. So that's the reason I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about the startup postdoc program that potentially they offer the dual track for the PhD high-level graduates for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like there are a lot of opportunities for us to nurture our young talents. And Professor Lou, please. We'll take turns. I know that there are a lot of hands putting up. Yeah.
Thank you. This is Professor Haitian Lou from PolyU, and I'm also a member of PReCIT. So I just wish to ask the speaker's opinion on academic-led startups. So actually, today, we know that Professor Li Pei and Professor To, they're all successful academic-led startups, but we also know that many of them may fail. Okay, so just in your opinion, should universities encourage professors to engage in such startups if they have creative ideas or commercializable IPs? And what advice would you give to academic startups? Thank you.
Just an example as a case, since times about 7 years ago, Professor Tang came with a few students from Chinese University, they came to Science Park. We're thinking of forming a company doing AI, facial recognition. At that time, it was like very basic. And we're thinking, is that good or is that bad? And eventually we said, we want to encourage, because we know the technology is there. We are thinking very long-term, just to try out whether the market is there. And so eventually they joined Science Park. And I think we definitely encourage, particularly we think that in Hong Kong, there are a lot of very good research that is hidden, that is not commercialized. And that's why Hong Kong government has been sponsoring the program Inno Hong Kong that I'm talking about, is to pull the research out to more into development stage and to commercialize. So I would definitely encourage that.
Maybe I can share my observations so far, because at Poly, of course, the university does encourage our inventors and professors to commercialize their research technology. But my observation is that I think it's not that easy, because as I've shared earlier, it's easy to form a startup company. Is of course, you do need some professional advisory and get it done, etc. That is something very technical. But whether they can have a good business model, they can really understand the market, etc. I think that is very challenging. I think, for example, VST as well as Grand Rise, I think these are good examples, because we have a good match of technology people as well as business people. I think for VST case as well as Grand Rise, Professor Lee as well as Kenny, I think this partnership is very important. So we need to have a business angle on how we can apply the technology in the market, and also from a market perspective. So I think that is important, because my observation within PolyU is that the professors will just form the company, and they will just, because they have a lot of priorities, because a lot of research opportunities, I think it's very natural for them to continue the research. But the question is, the market don't wait them. So especially when we talk to investors, the investors know our leading professors. They have a list, okay? They have a shopping list. What technologies they would look for, etc. And they are very anxious to have those leading technology commercialized. But the question is whether the professors have the motivation to move on and have a sense of urgency to commercialize the technology. I think that is the gap to be filled.
Let me share with you a real experience. So recently, Science Park assigned me to be a mentor of a startup company. The head of it is a very famous professor from one of the very famous university in Hong Kong. So so I visit him, and then with a number of his technicians, and then they present the business case to me. After listening to half an hour, I don't know what problem he's trying to solve. And I don't know what market is actually can go. Right. And then after I look at that, and then I said, you need to develop the go-to-market strategy. And he said, what is go-to-market? What do you mean? Now, I'm not saying that he's not smart. Don't get me wrong. It's just that from a lot of time from industrial, from academic professor, they really undermine the commercialization process. They think that is easy to do. That's why I keep emphasizing entrepreneurship is an idea, and the commercialization is a business plan. You need to develop a business plan. So, and I think in that case, I see that he has his own student to develop the so-called the commercialization of it. It's the end result is going to be a fail. So, and therefore, I think that we need to, from academic professor point of view, you need to respect the commercialization is a professional, that the people actually know something about that, can actually complement of that. That will be something that I really encourage the professor to do, build a real team to work on your commercialization of the process.
Just a word on that. I think I know which team you're talking about. What happened is, I think the professor is actually open. And so we actually have placed a very commercial experienced person in that particular sector to join the team and be one of the director. And that makes the circle whole. So I think for technology, really sound professors, if you want to do a startup, that you have to be open to embrace, to know what you're good at, what is lacking, and be open to embrace the talents.
Yeah, and also to supplement on that, I think going back, to the question, I'm sure, there are a lot of, interest in the professors, on the research and so on, and there are definitely a lot of, potential in different areas and so on, which may not actually relates to commercialization or whatever. I think that is important that they continue to pursue that, because you don't know, what the world will need in 3, 5, 10 years time. Yeah. So we have to, continue to pursue that kind of, excellence, trying to, really research to depth, on certain things. And for them actually to turn those output into commercial product, to me, is a totally separate thing. Yeah. And to me also, that is not, if they try to do that and didn't succeed, that is not a failure. Because if you ask any, commercialization projects or startups or whatever, it is very, very rare, if at all possible, that they succeed in the first time. Yeah. There are same with actually research, with R&D, you have many different ideas and you have to try on and have that perseverance, to really continue to pursue, for that. So similarly for that. So that is why I think there are different channels to try to bridge that gap. We mentioned about, the startup postdoc program, the Cyberport, creative microfund, that kind of things that can allow you to try things out. Yeah. Before you actually decide to do a commercialization project or form a startup or whatever. Yeah. And that, I think, is something that we need to try to, bridge those sort of two paths. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that right now it's 5:30. Probably we'll have another 10 minutes more of discussion, and I can see a lot of hands are putting up, and I've got the long list here. So shall I invite Professor Charles, and then you will be next.
Well, I like Charleston's presentation title. You copied it from a very famous Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The good got everything at the end. The bad got killed and lost his life, if I remember correctly. And the ugly managed to survive, but he lost everything. That means bad job. So from your point of view, this question is not only for Charleston, actually, from your points of view, because we are talking about policy research today. So what would you be telling the government? The CE is going to deliver his policy just soon. What would you be telling the government in terms of policy? What should we do, or what should we do more in order to prevent our young people from becoming the bad or the ugly? Of course, we want to have more good at the end.
Okay. No, I just my advocacy, because as I shared earlier, I think currently a lot of research, government funding is towards research, basic research or applied research. And for the public incubators, private VC, etc., is more, say, seeding or pre-series A and then beyond. So I really believe that we do need more resources at the POC or proof of technology stage, because I think the whole idea is not just to encourage more startup for the sake of having more startup. I think otherwise, we don't want them to die, right? So I think if the government can let the universities have more resources so that we can create a breeding ground, okay, so that either the researchers or students or the brilliant ones can really pilot their ideas and to take their ideas or research a little bit more further before they really set up their startup company in a serious manner. So that's my thought.
Right. Government doesn't want much risk, but in terms of investments, there's a lot of risk involved, especially for early stage investments. And we have been telling the government that the failure rate is high. Say, for example, in a typical investment model, 80% of the 50% of the companies fails. About 30 or 40% of the companies, they will just reap the minimal return. And it's a 10% of the company that really becomes really successful. So this is the failure rate that we have been telling the government. You have to understand this type of risk that you're going into. Secondly, I would like the Hong Kong community actually be more embracive. For example, in the West, what Charles has been saying, people would come up and say, yes, I've been through three times entrepreneur, and all of them failed, but we don't call them failure, we call them lesson learned. And that becomes positive on your resume. And these are positive things that you can put in a resume. Versus in Hong Kong, sometimes when I see the investors, they are not so experienced in investing earlier stage. They would say, oh, you have a track record, you failed this and that. Is that a red flag? So this is the mentality that investors need to change as well. So that's a risk appetite that the investors as well as the government needs to understand.
Yeah. What I would like, I'm actually very, happy to hear what Dr. Lou mentioned just now about her, advocacy. That's been my advocacy too for many years, at least, when I started, this Cyberport role, that for government to invest, into this entire innovation and technology thing, we should definitely focus a lot on the research and development area, which is the majority of what the 150 billion goes to. But at the same time, we should also focus on the application of bringing those R&D output to something on the ground that general public can feel that they are improving their living, that the younger generation are actively engaged in the process so that they can find, new opportunities and so on, and continue this very sort of vibrant, dynamic spirit. Yeah. So to me, for the government, there are multiple, benefits in trying to allocate more resources while they are allocating, additional resources to R&D. That I emphasize is also, very, very important because it's not for the immediate thing, but more for the future. Yeah. And we all do not know what future, will be. So we have to, invest, in that. But then at the same time, also put, additional resources on bringing those things to the ground so that social impact, the growth opportunity for younger generation and so on are also achieved, through that innovation and technology policy. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah. So, Chris, so this is my own view, not my MIT view. In my humble opinion, innovations and commercialization is a funnel. $10 billion put into Hong Kong, and that early portion of the funnel is actually getting bigger. Another $10 billion is going to go in with the strategic tech fund. The funnel get bigger, but that side of the end is not getting bigger. I don't see any more funding to train up more entrepreneurship in Hong Kong. I'm familiar with all 6 university, all 8 university entrepreneurship program. Also, I'm very familiar with Cyberport and Cyberport, right? The funnel. That side of the funnel is not opening. That side is keep on. I know that this is actually we need more of those, but that side of the funnel need to be opened up. Otherwise, if the innovation 唔可以產業化, and what's the point of doing it? So that portion of it, as of now, none of the university have actually a very good training on the entrepreneurship. And the way that we have to make that portion of the funnel is getting bigger. Otherwise, you remember this part of it is our youth, or the 年輕人. My son, 29 years old, he's an entrepreneur, right? If that funnel is not open, he's get frustrated. And in Hong Kong, we need to, at the end of the day, we need to train up the entrepreneur at the commercialization one. Because what is interesting is that if this venture fail, the youth can jump into another one using the same methodology once the methodology is known. So therefore, that gives them a more opportunity to try. We need to give them more opportunity to youth to try new things, so that when the funnel getting big, the results getting bigger. We don't need, just like Gary, where's Gary? Gary's here. So just like what Gary said, we are not talking about unicorn. We are talking about successful startup, successful company. That's the outcome that we should measure. Failure should be a lesson learned things to do. So that's my opinion, not my company.
Maybe may I also supplement one point, because you're talking about the risk. Actually, my suggestion is that, especially at the early stage, okay, usually from an investor perspective, is more risky. So they're less willing to invest in those early stage startups. So very happy to hear that like Cyberport as well as Science Park are going to launch a new funding program in support of the earlier stage startup. I think that is a good news. I think just like PolyU, from university perspective, we are not running a business, but to extent possible, we create our equity investment fund. Even though the fund size is not comparable to Science Park or Cyberport, but still, for example, we adopt a 1-to-1 investment ratio. So it means that it's a university commitment to nurture the potential winners. So because NSS so far is on 2-to-1 basis, right, or going to be getting better, right? So I think that is important, because it demonstrates government's commitment in nurturing potential startup companies for the benefit of Hong Kong. That's one point. Another one, I think we have been talking a lot about the tech startup. I think it's important, but I'm just like PolyU, we also nurture social innovators. But I do believe that social innovators are equally important for the development of a society. So other than just focusing a lot about tech. So I think, for example, like a social innovation, the government have a good SIP program administered by the SIE, that is the social innovation, I forgot the full name. So, but I think in terms of resources, it's only a very limited amount of resources. It's only like an ideation of a Cyberport. I think maximum 100,000, that's all. So if those social innovators really want to grow bigger, they don't have the resources. So perhaps it is another area we may consider. Yes.
Same amount. So whatever this thing.
Okay, Miranda, thanks for raising about the ideas on social innovation. In fact, there's a question for every one of you that has been put down beforehand. I read it now. There seems to be an imbalanced distribution of funding between technological innovation and social innovation, which arguably are both important to a better world. What are some of the suggestions you would give to social innovations? New services, new organizations, new initiatives without a tech element.
I would say maybe yes. The emphasis a lot of times are on technological, innovations and so on. But then actually, social innovation is also, very, very important. I totally agree. And this seems to be, converging on at least certain areas. Now, for example, environmental technology. Yeah, that has a lot actually to do with the social impact, and also just leveraging technology to generate, social, impact in terms of environmental improvements and so on. Yeah. At Cyberport, we actually identifies ourselves, very differently from other platforms like, Science Park, because we actually, most of our companies, community companies, actually are more business model innovation than technological innovation. They use, new latest technology to apply in a different way, such that there is more social impact, there is more economical impact, and so on. So that is, to me, as I understand, very different, from what Science Park is doing. So I think we need to also, that's one of the things that relates to what I mentioned earlier about bringing the R&D to the ground, so that general public can feel it. That has a lot to do with or can be generated a lot through social innovation. And I totally agree, with what Charleston and also Gary, mentioned earlier. It may not be all, unicorns, but there are, for social innovators, they are very likely not to become a unicorn, of that class. But then they actually have a lot of society contribution that we should encourage.
Maybe I just share my initial thought, because I'm thinking about applications, because just having a good idea is not efficient. Because I'm thinking if we talk about social innovation, we do need to have a champion. So I don't know, because of course, I think government has a very important role, because we have a lot of NGOs, big or small. So somehow in terms of funding or in terms of the overall mechanism, if we can integrate better so that we can bring the good social innovation ideas and then partner with the government or the major NGOs who have a broader connection with the community, that may be more effective instead of having the social enterprise doing things on his or her own. Yes.
From Science Park point of view, I think sustainability and technology, they are merged together already. And we have actually have an advisor, external advisor, specifically for sustainability. So what we are doing now for every single thing we are doing, we put in about 20% of sustainability in terms of how we craft the program, what we do. So we're embracing sustainability in Science Park as well.
I'm not saying that, Science Park should not do that. I'm just saying, the focus is very different. And there are a lot of, I totally agree that actually this is converging a lot. Think about Gerontech, which is also, very much related to social impact and so on. There are many other areas that are now converging. It is actually very, very difficult, and probably going to be even more difficult, is to do things without applying technology. So it definitely is not conflicting.
Okay, so maybe Gary and two of you, why don't you share your views and questions, and then we answer all together.
I'll make it very short. I believe that in failures actually is a prerequisite for success. I think I just want to echo this to say. Of course, I'm a little bit. It's quite pity that I didn't hear a lot of failures, in this forum, because failures is more important than so-called number of unicorns, how much funding you have to raise. I think so. Because I'm the chairman of the Swiss Capital Group and we are investor, and I think I just want to echo another thing like that. When I hear a viewpoint from Elon Musk, although I didn't agree with him in a number of areas, but he did mention one thing, that the rate of innovation is more important than preempting or protecting your technology with the patent. So what I believe is that I think one of the key themes today is how to commercialize the IPs, to go into the market. But of course, from my perspective, commercialization is not just about financials. I don't need a unicorn. I need an IP that is good for the market, good for mankind, good for people. We do have the humanitarian perspective, the value. So that's why my question is, while we try to, involve in the funding this kind of IPs, but while, like Dr. Yip said, thousands of the IPs are now still in the hands of the academic institutions, like the universities. How are we going to tap into that market as a private, from the private sector? I do believe in like Miranda's point of view, like PReCIT, I take to note that that is the best part I see today. But how are we going to get that? How can we cut the red tape? How can we really, lift up all the bureaucracy, getting to there? Because for us, like our Swiss Capital Group, with our double chairman, we have the funding. We try to, migrate some of the funding from Europe to Asia. And we try to really put a domain here. We want to have China. We want to have Hong Kong. But, we cannot just keep talking and talking. I see a lot of players talk around a number of ideas, but we really have to stick in the ground, really get into that. And I'm in the passion of getting into that. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, so I want to see a way. My question is how to cut the red tape and get into that. And I just lastly, for my last half a minute, when I echo about the social value, the social innovator, I think over the last 6 months, we have innovated and set up a humanity bank in one country in Africa. That must not be a unicorn because we can never imagine that still in this planet, there is a country with only 2% of the access to banking in the particular country. So you can never imagine we invested and get a unicorn, but we do that. It's for humanity. Okay, so this is one thing that I echo that. Okay, so this is my short question. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Hopefully.
Yeah, so thank you very much for sharing. To make it short, I'm Hing from Prosperity Energy, a startup. And so so far as I know, research to commercialization, it involves multiple parties like startups, university, investment, and also partnership organization as well. So I would like to know, maybe the other side, is there any we call it lesson learned, or is that a failure in this kind of collaboration, or what kind of collaboration you would suggest, particular as a startup position, and also a different multiple parties is actually a little bit more supplements to the question of Gary as well. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, thank you both, and see whether you want to.
I think on IP usage to commercialization, I really think that the government has a role there. It is really need to have funding and push on this innovative process, if not in the policy address, hopefully in the budget coming up. Basically, have university or research institute really pushing the IP. IP maintenance is very expensive. ASTRI is millions of dollars are putting in for just maintaining it. So if you're not using it, you're wasting a lot of money for universities also. So I think we really need the government plays a role there, not just, okay, professor, do you want to really doing that? For your question is, how do we learn about failures? I really think about in terms of the whole, what I call ecosystem. Today in Hong Kong, we are not talking about failure that much, right? Everybody's talking about, okay, unicorn, Animoca, and Cloak, and Sense Time. Those are successful, not completely because they're in Hong Kong. Right, they're either in mainland or outside mainland or overseas, very successful. So I really think at some stage, maybe Science Park or Cyberport really need to have more lesson learned sharing. And one thing also is tied to the first question. A lot of the startup, the way I see it is they already have. They think they have to do everything from scratch. There are a lot of technologies already out there in universities that they can just use or license to supplement their core technology. And we are not doing enough on the ecosystem to educate them.
Maybe I'll try to address the second questions related to collaboration. I think the collaboration area is very broad. Perhaps to look at it in a more systematic way is really to understand the ecosystem or the stakeholders that will affect how you become successful, in particularly your area of trade or whatever. Now you were with us this morning, with a Go Business Go Tokyo event, at Cyberport. That is actually one key thing that we do. with Japan as one of the potential overseas market that we encourage with our support and so on, to let our Hong Kong startups to go outside of Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is a small market. Now it's much better because with the Greater Bay Area initiatives and so on, that we have a bigger sort of domestic market, but still it's not going to be easy because we may not be very competitive, with some of the mainland counterparts if we do not focus on the things that we are strong in. So it is important that we look into the various stakeholders that can make what you are already strong in even more even stronger. There are things that we can work with. There are stakeholders that we can work with that can make us, like that. So overseas, platforms, similar to the one that we have for Science Park and Cyberport and so on. So we collaborate with that. We collaborate in the investor, areas with associations that actually are a pool of investors trying, to work or to identify targets to invest in. So all these are areas that platform like us are trying very hard, to identify and engage them so that we can then enhance the chance of success of the companies in our platforms. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I will be quick. So this is my real experience. So I have one of the blockchain startup, and then what we found is that all the others startup ecosystem, just like what Denis said, that we actually work together. So in other words, that I found that some of my startup that is actually all connected with each other in a way 就係圍爐取暖。So in other words, that we have a similar problem and we are supporting each other. And you develop that technology, you develop the technology, I develop the technology, we cross over using it. I think this is something that you should consider for your short-term ecosystem to build it up.
I encourage you to look at the two programs. One is ideation, the other one is incubation from Science Park. Although you're being looked after by Cyberport, so I think you're doing fine. Second, in terms of collaboration, I think actually Hong Kong startups actually has undermined the uniqueness and the importance of talking to each other, as you mentioned. So we have set up some called meetups for different topics, and for the startups to group together to brainstorm and collaborate. So those are the things that we try to, the problem we try to, solution we try to solve.
Okay, probably right now it's 5 to 6 already. So I think I have to announce that the forum would come to an end. But I would like to all of you to join me to give them a big hand. And in this forum, we have learned from speakers that the pathway for research to commercialization is not always easy. And we talk about failures and successes. And but however, there's no doubt that commercializing research works in IT plays an important role in not only improving people's quality of life and our environment, but also in fostering the IT development of our city to develop it into an international IT hub. So before the end of this closing, please let me advertise a bit of our upcoming milestone event of our Policy Research Center for Innovation and Technology. On the 24th of November 2022, which is about a little bit more than a month, the center will organize our launching ceremony, followed by the third research forum, focusing on the integration into the national system and the Greater Bay Area. More details will be announced to you through our email and our social media platforms. And please scan the QR codes projected in the screens to follow our Facebook and LinkedIn pages and stay tuned to the announcement from us. Once again, I would like to thank all the honorable speakers, representatives of the co-organizers, and supporting organizations, guests, on-site and online audiences for joining and supporting the research forum today. We sincerely wish to have your continued support to the events of our center in the future. Thank you and have a great evening. Thank you very much.